Why Sophia Bush really left Chicago PD. It wasn't about the script. For years, fans of Chicago PD assumed Sophia Bush left the show for typical TV reasons. Creative differences, wanting new roles, maybe just boredom. Turns out it was none of those things. Bush, who played Detective Erin Lindsay for 4 seasons, didn't just walk away from the show. She fought her way out. On an episode of Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert podcast, she explained that the decision came down to health, working conditions, and what she bluntly described as a consistent onslaught barrage of abusive behavior. That's not exactly a graceful exit. She said she stayed as long as she did because the people above her essentially guilt-tripped her into believing that leaving would put the whole production and everyone's jobs at risk. She described feeling trapped in a toxic work environment while pushing herself to keep going out of loyalty to the crew. The production's physical environment didn't help either. Bush said that shooting in Chicago's brutal winters was causing health issues for her and others, and she raised concerns repeatedly. According to her, those concerns were ignored. By the time she decided she was done, getting out of her contract wasn't easy. She said she had to threaten legal action and media exposure to force the network's hand. She didn't need to follow through on the lawsuit or the op-ed. The threat was enough. NBC let her go. So no, it wasn't about the writing, the plot lines, or even the franchise. It was about survival. And for Sophia Bush, getting out of Chicago PD wasn't just a career move. It was damage control. When Sophia Bush announced her departure from Chicago PD in 2017, fans were stunned. Her portrayal of Detective Erin Lindsay had become a cornerstone of the show's early seasons. Tough, sharp, and quietly vulnerable, Lindsay was a fan favorite, and Bush brought her to life with a gritty grace that helped launch Chicago PD as a major hit in the One Chicago universe. Officially, the departure was explained with a vague nod to creative differences and wanting to pursue new opportunities. The script, many assumed, had simply run its course. But over the years, the truth has unraveled, and it's far more personal, painful, and powerful than anyone expected. As it turns out, Bush didn't leave because of a storyline. She left to reclaim her peace. A city of lights, camera, and misconduct. Behind the scenes of Chicago PD, the energy was very different from the loyalty and family dynamics we saw on screen. According to Bush herself, the work environment was toxic, emotionally and physically. In an explosive interview years after her exit, Bush revealed that she endured of abusive behavior on set and raised concerns multiple times about the climate. It became unlivable, she confessed. I started to feel physically ill, like my body was trying to reject the experience. The bitter Chicago winters didn't help. She was shooting long hours in sub-zero temperatures, often without proper protection or breaks. Bush, who had a history of chronic health issues, found herself repeatedly asking production to provide even the bare minimum to keep her warm and safe. Her requests, she says, were largely ignored. But the deeper issue wasn't just the cold. It was the silence. Speaking up and getting shut down. Bush wasn't alone in her concerns. Whispers among cast and crew hinted at a pattern of problematic behavior from some higher-ups. There were reports of intimidation, unchecked temper tantrums, and a culture that discouraged speaking out. Sophia Bush, known for her activism and unwavering voice on issues like women's rights and workplace justice, wasn't built to play quiet. She documented everything. She had meetings with HR. She filed complaints. She made her boundaries clear. But instead of changes, she felt retaliation. In her words, she was told to stop being difficult. Instead of investigating the issues, Producers allegedly tried to make her seem like the problem. For Bush, who had endured the ups and downs of Hollywood since her early One Tree Hill days, this was an old wound reopening. "I wasn't going to let history repeat itself," she later said. "I wasn't going to let silence protect bad behavior again." An exit on her own terms. Midway through season 4, Bush made a decision. She would finish out the season, and then she was done. She had originally signed a 7-year contract, but began exploring her legal options to break it. It wasn't a light decision. She loved her character. She loved Chicago. She loved her castmates. But she no longer loved how abruptly Lindsay's exit came. In the final episodes of season 4, she was offered a job with the FBI in New York. A convenient plot device to write her off the show without much emotional resolution. To viewers, it seemed like a sudden career shift. But behind the scenes, it was a woman walking away from an unsafe environment with her head held high. The industry reacts. Bush's departure became a rallying point in Hollywood's larger reckoning with toxic workplaces. Around the same time, the #MeToo movement was gaining momentum, and more women in the industry began coming forward with stories of mistreatment, not just of harassment, but of burnout, bullying, and emotional abuse. In the wake of Bush's revelations, others who had worked on Chicago PD and other One Chicago shows began to speak more candidly about the pressure cooker environments. Some mentioned the lack of diversity behind the camera. Others spoke of verbal tirades and the expectation to tough it out. Sophia Bush, true to form, used her platform to push for change. "The goal isn't to burn everything down," she explained. "The goal is to build safer, healthier sets, ones where people can do their best work without sacrificing their well-being." Finding her voice and her joy. Again, leaving Chicago PD was painful, but it proved freeing. Bush soon dove into projects that aligned with her values. She launched podcasts like Work in Progress, where she spotlighted voices advocating for social change. She produced documentaries. She starred in projects that didn't just showcase her talent, but honored her integrity. And perhaps most importantly, she healed. She began using her story as a cautionary tale and a roadmap for others. For young women in Hollywood, for survivors of workplace trauma, for anyone who had been told to be quiet and smile, Bush became a symbol of what it means to walk away when your soul is on the line. Not the ending, but a new beginning. Looking back, Sophia Bush doesn't describe her departure from Chicago PD with bitterness. Instead, she calls it one of the most important choices of her life. "I loved Erin Lindsay," she said in a 2022 interview. "I still love that character, but I love myself more." And that's the real story. She didn't leave because the script got boring. She didn't leave because her character had run out of options. She left because the real drama wasn't on screen. It was behind the camera. And unlike most Hollywood stories, this one didn't end in tragedy. It ended in transformation. So why did Sophia Bush really leave Chicago PD? Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't solving crimes or chasing down suspects. It's standing up, walking out, and choosing yourself.